Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Attic Static Podcast, where we take your calls and answer your questions on just about anything. I'm Ray.
I'm Adam.
I will be Gary today.
I'm Johnny.
And I'm Ed.
All right, so today is August 6th. It's Sunday, 6:30. We're live on YouTube. We've got, just look us up at Attic Static Pod or Attic Static Podcast on YouTube, atticstaticpod.com. Today we're going to start the show with, just to see what's happening with Adam. So,
Go.
Adam, let's do it.
What's happening with me? Well, I got a challenge for Ed. I got sweet tart ropes here. We're going to put these in front of you, see how long they last, because of a comment you made on a previous episode.
All right, I'm going to try with my willpower. We'll see how it goes.
Those aren't the correct ones. So
That's
I have
okay.
a present
They
for
look
Ed
delicious.
that I'm going to leave over here and maybe eat myself of the Skittles gummies that you said, and we'll see if we can get you to do something. I also have...
But if those are the right ones, they should be in front of him.
Yeah.
Not yet.
And you should open the bag so he has to smell it.
And
It smells
I
good.
do have a present for Ray.
Wow.
Bob Ross
Bob
bobblehead.
Ross bobblehead.
Oh, that's
We got to
cool.
open this up and throw some at him.
Hold on. Adam or at him?
Well, I'm going to make sure they're okay.
I haven't made sure either. Wait, let me see.
Nice.
Hey, pretty good. That's got to be 3 points.
First
Easy,
one.
easy.
Wasn't there supposed to be some swear words that come along with this?
Yeah, we never really
But
defined
he didn't
how
eat
that
them
was
yet.
going to happen.
He's going to say something silly now.
No. You're correct. You had asked for some curse, so here's a very cursive word.
No.
Thank you very much for the candy.
We said cursing.
Oh, it's cursive.
Shut a camera. All right. So, realistically, what's going on with me is I am, 4.5 weeks after foot surgery here, and I'm pushing it as hard as I can every day. Ed, you're going to yell at me, but what I'm doing is because I've got to be ready to get on a mountain in about 5 weeks, less than 5 weeks now, I'm just using pain as my judge, and if it doesn't hurt, I keep doing more. So I'm off crutches. I'm out of the boot. The doc doesn't know yet, but I'm able to do a lot of things pain-free, so I'm doing it.
Wait.
That's awesome.
So you purposely got this operation how many weeks before you were planning a mountain trip?
Well, I got the right foot done May 15th, and then
The wrong foot on.
yeah, that was the wrong one.
Oh.
So no, it actually was the right one. Then the left one on July 5th, before the right one was fully healed. To kind of compress that time schedule to give me 9.5 or so weeks before the mountain. So it's doable, sort of, kind of, but I'm pushing hard. I thought you were going to scold me for that. You should be taking it easy, but
Yeah, but I would ask
Yeah,
someone
let's
who
hear it.
understands, like, is
So-
that normal? Is it good, bad, indifferent? What?
So here's the thing. As long as your surgeon has given you the okay to start doing activity and exercise, you don't have a weight-bearing restriction, those are the big keys. Oftentimes after surgery, the biggest thing I tell, folks in the clinic is you have to be mindful of post-operative restrictions. They're not there necessarily because, they're concerned about increasing your pain, although I'm sure all your surgeons, want you to have, comfortable recovery. They're there to protect the post-operative work that was done. And the biggest issue after surgeries is commonly the young, healthy, motivated patient who's just chomping at the bit to get going.
It's champing at the bit. We should be correct here.
Thank you.
well,
Champing?
Yeah.
Not chomping?
I thought
champing.
it was like a horse chomping on the bit.
I think
No,
it is
that's not
champing. But in fact, Ed's right. I was chomping.
on the gummies.
Champing?
Don't question me.
So it turns out like those folks are really not at most risk because what winds up happening is that early period when there are post-operative restrictions, those folks figure, intuitively, well, I feel pretty good. Why can't I put weight? Why can't I move in that direction? And that's something you have to be real mindful of, right? Communicate with your surgeon. Make sure you adhere to those post-operative restrictions when those things are in place.
So doing what I'm doing without my surgeon's permission, I could be completely screwing myself and reversing the positive impacts of the surgery. But mechanically, how would this manifest? Like I've got plates and screws. Am I going to be shooting screws out through my boots, or is the bone going to like over calcify? Like what could go wrong?
Typically, after orthopedic surgery is looking at stability of the work that was done and the integrity of the work that was done. So that's why you want to adhere to post-operative restrictions. But you definitely want to communicate with your surgeon.
So
wouldn't it get loose?
what does that mean? Integrity, like the screws coming out of the
think about
bone?
the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It wasn't supposed to walk around, and it did, and then it fell.
Yeah, so what happens is,
Hasn't fallen yet.
things are put in
leaned.
place. You want them to stay in place, right? And all the tissue you have around there, right, has to be calcified, has to scar down. And so you want that placement that was originally intended to be the placement that is therefore taken long term, as opposed to being off a little bit.
So I understand
So if
that.
you got a screw loose, then you could have a problem.
I've had, yeah. I took my car and they said the problem is you got a
Wait.
loose nut behind the wheel, and we never fixed it. But anyway,
we're gonna have to slide these down, man. I'm gonna devour that whole bag.
Ed, to clarify, so you've got a screw going into a bone that can't really move laterally, but it could potentially back its way out
So what
or
hap-
drill further in.
So what happens, what a lot of times people don't understand, bone is not static tissue. Bone is dynamic, right? And so bone is constantly being laid down by the body and constantly being reabsorbed by the body. So it's a dynamic tissue. So what happens when things are put in place, a lot of times post-operative restrictions, either weight bearing or certain movements, that shouldn't be done, are there to allow those things that were placed to settle in and to be stable before you start putting weight on there.
All right, sorry, Doc. You're going to carry me down the stairs because I don't have crutches today.
Wait, but seriously, so you're planning on going where in
We're gonna-
4 to 5 weeks? You said.
Yeah, we got Bora Peak in Idaho starting up September 10th, and then a few days later we'll be in Glacier doing some orienteering, mountaineering, climbing type stuff. That's the plan. So my thought was to get to that point in a short time, I've got to be pushing the recovery here. So what I've been doing is, as much as I can, provided it's pain free. Like if I feel something, okay, don't do that again.
Right. So just talk to your surgeon. Talk to your surgeon. A lot of times, there may not be restrictions after certain procedures, right? After, a certain period of weight bearing restriction, they might say, hey, you're good to go, Adam, whatever you can do, whatever you can tolerate. But the main thing is that I always, try and let patients know is after any surgical procedure, you got to have the communication with the surgeon, right? That's going to be really important.
But
talk to them.
I keep going back to it. Like, you couldn't just do this on the month after you came back.
Sure, it could, but I want to get it over with. And in the summer, it's too hot for me to be real active outside. Hate the heat, hate the humidity. So that was kind of the objective.
Okay.
And the only issue is maybe pushing it a little close with the schedule.
I was going to say because
And your elbow's all better?
No, still working on that.
So you got an elbow problem.
Got another problem with the shoulder too. I couldn't figure out. It was like coming and going, and finally I figured out the motion that triggers it. So
Get him on the
Yeah.
table, Ed. Figure this
we
out.
have to have an episode just
Yeah.
to do the therapy and see
Yeah,
what's
well,
up.
yeah.
But
Let's
more
check it out.
importantly, you're in the middle of the mountain. Let's run through a scenario. You're in the middle of the mountain. Whatever they put in your leg, is that removed before you go to the mountain
no,
No, it's
the
permanent.
the screws and plates are permanent.
for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming.
Plus they're titanium. And titanium is cool, right?
well, that's
titanium's cool.
got no fat there, right? So you're ready to like feel the cold and feel it there and the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not the coldest it realistically would get, even on the summits at 4 or 5 in the morning would probably be 15, 20 degrees. So it's not extreme cold.
That's interesting. The only reason why I asked, when I did my arms, I had the opportunity to either use the fixator, get it removed, or put the plates. And one of the things they said, those plates with temperature change and the fact that there's not a lot of fat, you were going to have to deal with that for the rest of your life. So they're not taking that out, right? You're saying it's going to stay
Correct.
there, or
It
could you
stays
take
there.
it out if you wanted to?
I guess you could, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose.
No, the reason why I say is that I think some of them put those screws that they dissipate and all that, and then there's ones that if you do feel the discomfort, they will go back and pull it out.
I
At
do.
least that's what they told me.
I mean, your thing might have been bigger. Like you have big plates and stuff that might have a big impact. Like when I had my ACL done, I think I had 2 titanium screws in that are just there forever, right? But
And no feeling, no nothing.
no, nothing. It's been 25 years.
No.
But there are also 2 little screws that are buried in my knee versus like a giant plate in the side of your arm that might be more exposed to.
Right.
So when are you
element.
guys getting your titanium?
Yeah.
You feeling left out?
Yeah.
No, actually, I have
I'm
titanium.
good.
Maybe.
You
Yeah.
got titanium.
Yeah, I
do?
have titanium. Yeah,
He's genetically correct, so,
So,
he's going to run.
so Johnny,
He's
do you have
100 years
any
old.
metal left in your arm? You got any titanium?
No, I chose not to have any of that. So I have
Okay.
the scars, obviously, but no metal.
Got it.
So in this particular one, I could have opened all the way up to here. They would have put a plate, and that would have stayed there forever. But the guy says, since I'm not very large or anything, I would have felt that every time. And if it gets really cold out, People
Yeah,
get
but like
sensations.
when you flex, I mean, that'd be like titanium.
Yeah.
Well, I think
be like Wolverine,
the
maybe.
ladder was pretty cool. Ray and I were in the Walmart in Puerto Rico, and the guy was like, "Do you remember, Ray?" The guy was like, "Did you get bit by a shark? Oh my God, that's amazing!"
Hell yes.
He and I were like, "Yeah." I was like, "No."
Wait, so I
no,
want to
I'm
go
just
back. Ed,
kidding."
what do you have metal in? Where?
So I actually have metal in my neck about, I guess it's 3 years now. I had a 2-level cervical disc replacement. So what happens, they have make
I thought
total
men don't
joints.
have cervicals.
Yeah, so,
Cervix.
yeah, so,
I got you. I got you.
yeah, so the top
Was
part
it
of the
genetic
spine.
then?
No.
And
Well,
look,
partly,
to
but-
our tens and tens of listeners, we're not
Tens and tens?
yes, maybe 10.
10?
Million.
We're not necessarily falling apart. This will happen to you too when you're 50 plus.
Wait, I don't have any metal in me.
You're kind of
Yeah.
an
Yeah,
exception.
you're the
I-
20%.
Yeah.
He's the 20% on the liking his job. You're the 20% on the titanium.
Right. But you know what the good part of
It's
that
good thing we
Adam,
have
Give
5
yourself-
because that'll always work.
Give yourself time because you're not stopping running.
Well, that doesn't mean I'm going to need metal.
Yeah, you could trip, fall.
Johnny, break his arm. Let's
do
get some
that.
titanium in him.
But Adam, the silver lining of what you're saying, right, is that it's true. It's
Titanium
not necessarily-
lining.
It's true, titanium
That joke.
lining. Not necessarily, that we're falling apart, but in life, we have to go through all kinds of obstacles and challenges, right? But yet that does not mean in any way you have to become sedentary, right? You can stay active, right? And I think it's a great point, what you're saying about sharing about your plans for what you want to do after your surgery, right? I had surgery also, but after that, life goes on, right?
Well, that is a good point. It is about staying active,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
was mine medically necessary? I asked the insurance companies to tune out right now, but there's a little bit of a debate there. Was Ray? Can you live without an ACL? Sure, you can live without an ACL. These
My-
are not life-threatening surgeries.
No, the knee doctor asked me, right? Like I was like 26 or something, and he said, like, if you're not going to be active, you don't need to do this surgery. Just go without it, And I was thinking, I'm going to go in the next 60 years with missing an element of my knee and saying, okay, I got to be inactive for 60
No.
years. It makes no sense.
You wouldn't have made it 60 years.
Yeah, there's
being
no way.
inactive. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with that is that
No pickleball.
No pickleball.
You've got a lot of increased biomechanical stress right inside of the
Yeah.
joint surfaces. Yeah, because it's not going to be as stable. So you're going to do your thing, living your life, hiking, backpacking, going on uneven terrain, and now you have more wear and tear in your joints. So definitely made the right choice because you want to be active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the point is, living in 2023, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of ways to keep your body going.
Yeah, and the great thing is, just like your cell phones and your tablets, all these surgical components, they're always getting better. They're always improving. Like every other aspect of technology, right? The next generation is always better than the previous generation. And the next generation is just, a few months down the road. They're always getting replaced. So that's a very nice thing about that.
Yep.
I think we have a question.
All right. Well, we do have some questions, but I do have
Let's
one
see
thing.
what just came in. Why are you guys talking about feet for 20 minutes? Go now. Let's go to the next one.
It's not feet. It's your operation and what you're going to do.
Operation.
And trying to recover.
Titanium.
So I do want to just say this one thing. So someone said chomping at the bit.
He just wants to show that I'm
Gary
right.
corrected
He
him.
said it.
It said
Oh, yeah.
champing at the bit. It's
that what it is?
champing at the bit. So
Oh, okay. Thank you for the correction.
technically it's champing at the bit, but according to Grammarist, they're both acceptable because everybody says it that way, and they think chomping.
So if everybody-
We
Yeah,
like
correct,
champing.
But champing is the real
So we're both correct.
word.
We should do it right.
Is
He's more
important stuff.
correct.
Yes.
Want make sure
Good job.
everybody
How'd you know
remembers
that?
this. Very,
I pretty much know
very
that.
Someone corrected you,
important
right?
stuff.
Yeah, I know almost everything.
Really? What's the lottery numbers for tomorrow?
I don't know that.
Oh.
I can't predict
Not
the
telling.
future.
No, the answer is I'm not telling you.
All right, let's get into this. So, all right, here we got one. I think this one's going to be for Johnny. My toilet sounds like it's leaking or something. Every once in a while, it flushes by itself. Any ideas on what's going on?
Can I answer it?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I like when I try these because I
Come on.
can sometimes get them right. I've had this before. So basically, what it is the flapper is not sitting properly or seating properly. So
What's a flapper?
It's when you pull the lever down, it comes up. The toilet water up top goes below, and it fills back up.
It's the little round rubber thing.
This is in the tank
Yes, in the tank.
behind where you sit or stand.
Yes.
Correct.
So it's not sitting properly, so water will drip through. And once the water drips down to the point where the water goes low enough, it's going to fill back up. So that's the water you're hearing. So you either need to replace probably the flapper.
Yeah. So to
Am I right?
Yes, correct. So to finish
Yeah.
this thing, there's two ways to do it. You go to Home Depot. You can buy the entire kit as long as you know your brand, your make, model. They are universal ones.
Or just look at it, like, and either take it with you or take a picture and just go buy the same.
pretty
Yeah.
universal.
So a lot of the times, like for instance, I had an odd Kohler one that had a completely different setup. You couldn't take it out. It was like it was so deteriorated that if you touched it, it just turned it to pieces. So you get your model serial number, and if you go down that aisle, there's a little book, and that little book in that aisle, and if you have the opportunity to get an employee who actually knows what they're doing, you could find the components that go in there. But to Gary's point, you're just simply leaking out of the bowl, and you could hear it. And if
We're
it gets
leaking out of the back.
yeah, that's the way I'm saying is the bowl is the back part where it's
Okay.
housing the water. That's where.
So
don't know
I
if
have a
that's the
question
correct name.
because I replaced most of my flappers with one of those energy saver ones where it's like a big cone that goes inside. And then you have two options, a 1 or a 2.
Right.
I don't find they work very well though, because over time it's a silicone seal and it starts leaking even worse than a flapper.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, what's your experience with that?
So I wouldn't modify it unless it came from the OEM that way. It's just the way life is, right? If they wanted it to be that way, they would have put it that way.
And the OEM is original equipment manufacturer.
Yeah. So if it came that way with the 2 buttons like he's referring to, usually one will have like 1 swipe and the other button will have 2 swipes, and it's a larger button, which connotates like what you did. But it's not a difficult thing.
Number
right?
1 or number
number
2.
2, exactly.
Right.
So the point is that all of those parts are available at Home Depot or any of your home convenience stores. It's not something that you should just change your toilet like some people have done. And it's probably, I want to say, what do you think?
$20.
$20 and a 20-minute job?
Not even $20. The first time I ever did it, I had no idea what I was doing. So it took me a little longer because
Than 20
you have
minutes?
to because I didn't realize you had to really drain all the water out of the bowl or whatever you want to call it. So when I took the thing out, water's dumping all over the place. And
Yeah.
this is
So
not
I think
Right.
because it's one of those things that you don't really do a mental note, but it's the tank, right? So the tank, not the bowl.
Yes.
The tank has all these components, and usually all you do is turn off the water that's usually under it on the wall. You turn it off, make sure it's nice and off. You flush it. What you're going to notice is that all the water goes down and it doesn't fill back up again. But to his point is usually you have a layer of like a 1-inch water still there. So you take the valve off on the bottom, put something to catch that water, and then you can do all the service. It's usually like 20 minutes, and it's not a difficult thing to do.
So, Johnny, you're on a roll now. I'd like to go back to a question that came up, or a partial solution to the power steering issue that came up last week. And I'm going to just jump in here because as it pushes through 120 degrees in the attic, I don't know how long I'm going to be conscious. So the issue was that the power steering was intermittently stiff as you go around. So the first thing I did was change the power steering fluid. Very easy. You find the power steering reservoir and a turkey baster or a siphon, and you pull out the power steering fluid. To get more in the reservoir, you just turn the wheel back and forth real quick. It pumps into the reservoir. Eventually, you get more or less all of it out. Then you put fresh power steering fluid into it, cycle that through by turning the steering wheel, take that out. When that fluid starts to look less black and more clear like the fluid you're putting in, you're done. Then what you'll typically find is that didn't solve the problem. Most projects get bigger. So I think actually maybe it had the 20% improvement, but it's still, alternately stiff. So now I think
So what's next?
the answer is it's the U-joint on the steering column.
It's your joint.
I need to hit that with a degreaser or PB blaster or something. And I learned this from YouTube, of course. And fortunately, there's an AutoZone on the way here. So I stopped there. My Spanish was good enough to take care of the transaction. And I think I do not even need to take off the tire and the skid plates and the panels because I don't need to replace the steering column yet. I'm going to just try and spray that U-joint first. So tell me where I'm wrong or if it's worth a shot. This was $10.
I would only say that all of those mechanicals that most people suggest and show on the web is usually a car that was in very dirty conditions, very greasy conditions, either off-roading for a long time, but a normal daily driver, especially if it was in the garage, it's not going to be that. It's going to be that you took too long to change the fluid, and either the pump or the rack and or the system is damaged already.
So, because when I turn the wheel back and forth, that steering fluid it just pumps right into the reservoir very easily. Does that mean the pump is okay?
Not necessarily, no,
Okay.
because what happens is the pump is mechanical. It has these veins that turn. If those veins get damaged, and back in the day, you'd hear it. Like everyone's heard the bad. Well, I don't know. I don't want to
Okay.
assume.
So for
If you turn
$10,
your thing, you hear that. It's because the
Yeah.
fluid is passing through those veins. So the newer ones have much tighter tolerances, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't
Okay.
give you a physical feeling that there's something wrong.
Got it. So for $10, I'm going to give it a try,
course,
but I
of
won't
course.
get my hopes up, and
Yeah,
it will
so
probably go to the next.
The world needs to know
next
that
level.
usually when it comes to those things where joints are all dirty or need to be, it's because they were in a situation much different than daily driving, or the car has like 300,000 miles on it.
Like a 225.
Yeah, so you're getting to the
226.
point where you might be close to that, but I would definitely look at it first and see how
Yeah.
gunky it is.
But I don't think the truck is near the end yet. Like I might be, because now I think it's 125 in the attic. But
You'll get over
feel
the
that,
you'll get
though?
over the
Does it
heat.
feel
Adam.
that?
You'll get over the heat.
Hang in there.
Sweat mustache going on here.
Oh.
So we got
that's hanging in there good.
All right, so we're gonna go to the next question here. So I'm gonna pick from one of these two. Let's see. So, okay, so buying a first house, and I found something I really like, but it has septic and a well. House was built in 1980.
So
I don't know anything. Hold on, let me finish. I don't know anything about septic and wells. Is the water safe to drink? Is this a lot of work? Is there something I should know before deciding on buying this kind of house?
Well, first, depending on what state you're in, it's very likely that your health department's going to require a water sample. If they don't,
water down from the well.
water sample, well, yes, from the well, but you're going to take it from your kitchen tap. If the health department does not require it, call a local water lab and have it tested. I'm not going to get into everything that you could possibly test for. There's about, I think, 90 or so regulated parameters by EPA, but there's tens of millions of synthetic chemicals. So same thing with the septic system. You may be required to have that inspected by the health department. If you're not, absolutely go for it, because in a worst case, you need a new one. That'll set you back anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000,
So I'll tell you what. We have
Septic, he just got one.
Hold on, yeah. So we have a caller.
depending on what state
live.
you are in.
So let's come back to this question because I think there's more to it. But yeah, let's go to the caller. Hey, this is Attic Static. Who's there? Oh, man.
All right, we'll keep going.
I think we lost him.
On this. I think that was, kind of the answer. It varies. The cost of repair is going to vary, if it's needed, is going to vary hugely.
But I think we should back up a
State
second.
to state.
So this one, they asked, I don't know anything about these systems, right? So maybe we should actually explain
Yeah.
what these things are.
Yeah, they're not taboo.
Right. So having a well and septic means that the water that you get comes from a hole in your yard, a pipe that's drilled down into the ground in your house. It doesn't come from a pipe in the street that goes out to the water plant or anywhere else publicly. And you don't pay a monthly bill for that, right? You own it. You have a thing in your yard. It's yours. It's yours to be free when it's working, and it's yours to fix and pay for when it's not working, right?
You are paying the power of cost to run the pump from
Right.
it. That's typically it, other than replacing your pump every 20 years or so.
Right. So
Correct.
basically, you've got for the water, you've got a drilled well, which might be anywhere from 50 to 300 feet deep in your yard. It's got a pump that's all the way down there somewhere, not at the bottom, but near there, and with a pipe that comes all the way out and runs into your house, and then it feeds all the water systems in your house. So that's the well, and the water that you're drinking is coming from all the way down there.
And just to clarify, if your well does not have 50 feet of grouted casing, then you could be getting water that is from a shallower level, and in some states, it's not really a compliant well.
But no one knows what grouted casing is, right? So basically, when you drill that hole in the ground 300 feet down, right, the drillers decide where they want the water to come from, right? It could come from really deep, it could come from really shallow, and they seal off the parts that they don't want, right, with a grout, which is like a clay type
Well,
material, right?
let's clarify. Depends on if you're in an unconsolidated or consolidated formation. So if you are in a sand formation, yes, you've got ability to pull from potentially several different aquifers at different depths. You still need to seal off that top 50 feet. The driller can make some decisions there. If you are in a consolidated formation or fractured rock, essentially you're advancing that bit through solid rock. And the idea is at some point you're going to hit a fracture. A fracture is just a gap in the rock. And then secondly, you hope that that's where water is flowing. You may hit a gap at, or a fracture at 40 feet. I'm sorry, can't use it. You've got to hit one deeper. And this may be overkill here, but you can also televise the borehole. And if you hit a fracture at 40 feet, you see which angle it's running at and drill in that direction so you can hit that same fracture a little bit deeper.
Yeah, you could basically you're trying to keep from taking surface water, because once you drill that hole from the surface, then stuff could be running down the hole, like fertilizer from your yard and whatever else is on the surface from.
It goes down as far as 50 feet.
Your casing will go down 50 feet minimum in most states. The borehole can be 1,000 feet. Typically, I know we have global listeners, so this is going to be irrelevant to most people, but in most of North Jersey, if you don't hit a decent fracture by 500 feet, most times drillers will call it off. You're less likely to hit one deeper.
But to answer your question, Gary, so what the stuff like fertilizers and things on the surface are probably not going down 50 feet, but when you drill a well, you've now punched a hole, and it could run down the hole. Like every time it rains, whatever, that stuff now has a way to get down there where it didn't before. So if you don't seal that off, then you've caused a new problem, right? You've contaminated the.
So picture drilling with a 12-inch diameter bit. Actually, the residential well, back up, 8-inch diameter bit, right? And then stopping at 50 feet, then putting in a 6-inch diameter steel casing in the center of that, then pouring grout in the annular space between your borehole and the outside of that casing.
So filling up the outside of the straw, basically.
Right.
Are we giving way too much information?
Yes.
Well, no,
I think so.
I think
So
the information that's necessary for the homeowner or the wannabe homeowner is it normal? Is it common?
So
I think it is, right?
so-
we should be able
Are
to
wells
say
common?
wells are
Absolutely.
common, septic is
very
common.
common. And I think the takeaway here is there a well permit? Is there a well record? Your health department should have that on file. I would see if you can get your realtor to pull that information, talk to your health officer if you don't even know what you're looking at, and say, here, is this good?
Yeah.
And I think the other practical point on the well, the first home that we bought, they actually had a well on the property. But in this case, the well was only for irrigation. So if you're looking at a property to purchase, it's good to make that distinction. Are you looking at a well for the drinking water and for everything on the property, or is it just for irrigation? In our case, it was just for irrigation. We had city water, city sewer, and it was something that was feeding into the sprinkler system in that property.
And how do you know? The designation of that well will show up on the permit.
Got it. All right. So that's a well. And then, yes, to Johnny's point, common. Lots of people have them, but it's something you've got to manage, right? When you've got city water, you don't care. You just pay the bill every month and you never think about it, right? So that's well. Then there's septic.
And you guys have septic in your rentals. What are things that people can and can't do with septic?
So going on to septic. So your sewage or your waste from your house is either going into a septic system that's on your property, or it's going through a pipe out to the street and out to the sewer system that you don't care about. You just pay the bill every month, right? So when you have a septic system, or an on-lot septic system, they'll call it, you have a big tank underground that takes the water initially, and then there's a big field of soil and area that all that water and waste gets pushed into, so it biodegrades in your property, basically, right? And that's the thing that, back to what the caller's question is, like, what do I do with this thing? Like, again, you own it. You've got to deal with it. You don't have to pay a monthly bill for it anymore. But if it breaks, or not breaks, but if something goes wrong, if the tank leaks, if the field fails, like Adam said, anywhere from 20 to 60 grand to replace, right?
And how do I know if something's wrong with it? How do I know if it failed?
So you're either going to see really great grass growing on the top because all the waste from your house is not being broken down properly, or you're going to have some kind of sludge or water or something leaking out of your yard. I don't know if there's other
Smell.
Is there a service
smell it.
that is necessary, over time? Because I know people pump them out and stuff like that.
So they pump out the tank. So there's a settling tank that comes in first. So all the solids and everything is supposed to settle out. And every couple of years, you're supposed to get that pumped out because it starts to build up. That's one service. Other people do clean the fields out or pump out the fields, I believe, right? They not pump out, but they jet out the pipes in the field, the drainage field, to try to keep it clean. That's the only service I know of.
Okay.
You? That's about
Well
it,
said.
right? Yeah. So other than that, but yeah, it could be. We just had the 2 done in the Poconos, and all together, we replaced the tanks in both, and we replaced the field in one, and it was 26,000 total for the 2.
Right.
So we definitely got a good deal. I know the guy. You know, we've been doing work with this guy a long time, and he gave us a good deal on it. But
He knows the guy.
it's not cheap because I know a guy.
Well, the thing is, Central Jersey water is expensive. So not having a water bill is pretty cool.
It could be cool, yeah.
Yeah.
But every once in a
Do
while,
you know what the going rates are here? Do you know what you pay per 1,000 gallons?
I do.
How much?
I'm not going to repeat it, but we did, for different reasons, not household, but commercial or industrial. This section of Central Jersey is like second or third in the entire nation in expense. So you got to tell the people that usually in this area of New Jersey, you get paid. Let's say that your water bill was $100, your sewer bill is $100, so it actually doubles.
Yep.
They assume that all the water that you used went out, and it's their charge for treating it. So it becomes expensive.
Yeah, so typical rates are anywhere from $5 1,000 to $20 per 1,000 gallons. That's just water alone.
22.
Massachusetts, Boston area is known for high rates. Georgia, Seattle and San Francisco area. New Jersey has a lot of different private systems, so it's all over the map.
Yeah, my calculation that we use is not for residential. The reason why I say it's one of the highest in the country is it's includes the sewer and the surcharge if you're releasing BOD or TSS, so it's not for residential calculations.
Okay, so wrapping it up, nothing wrong with septic, well and septic, but you have to know how it works. You should make sure you read about it.
Or
Call-
get them tested first.
Talk to your health
definitely get 'em
department. Get experts to test them both. It's going to cost you a little more, but you could be saving yourself a lot of money.
Right, but you also want to read about it, learn how it works, understand it. When they tell you this is wrong or that's wrong, you know what they're talking about.
Okay, so let's understand something too. Usually it comes associated with a water softener or a water treatment system. Depending on those test results that you get, you'll know what you'll need, whether you have clear water iron, sulfur, all that stuff. There's a system that'll be attached to your incoming water that will treat that for you. And usually, if it is, for instance, a water softening system, you'll also have a cost to put the salt in that system every. I don't have that.
Yeah.
so-
Depends
but,
on your
yeah,
level
your
of usage. And then
your
if you want to
usage.
get real fancy, just soften the hot water. Don't soften the cold water because the hardness in the water, it's just calcium and magnesium. It's good for your pipes in your body. It's not good for the pipes, your mechanical
Yeah,
pipes in
so
your
there you
house.
go.
And you can save a lot of salt that way. The other way to go, instead of sodium chloride, go with potassium chloride. And then it's not as bad to soften your cold and your hot water, but that will cost you more.
Always does. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So we got a question from a viewer. This one says, this is back to Johnny. What are Johnny's thoughts on electric cars in terms of environmental impact? Somebody was listening in on a private conversation, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know what they mean by environmental impact, because anything that we make in this world has an impact, right? So specifically electric cars, the largest impact is the battery associated with it, and it's really just hoping that the I guess everything that we have available to us in the future lets us secure that they are completely recyclable and that the components in them are sourced correctly.
Maybe you could explain
but
why a
why-
battery has an environmental impact.
Okay, so electric car battery, just like the battery in your phone, just like the battery in almost anything that is not plugged in, it has multiple components, and there are certain components that make that charge last longer and with more potency, and those are ores and different items that come from the ground, and they are mined, just like gold, just like silver, and those units are
You're talking about what? Like lithium? What else?
lithium, cobalt. There's a host.
The rare earth metals.
Right. So these units are used in these batteries, and that's where the issue lies. They're right now, one particular location in the world, Africa comes to mind. They're mined in Africa. Everyone, I believe, knows that there's not a lot of policing, and there could be environmental issues, human rights issues when it comes to mining those items.
So, Johnny, what's the big deal with mining? I find a huge chunk of lithium or a huge chunk of cobalt, or is it not that simple?
No, it's not that simple. Well, more importantly, it's understanding. The question is, what are your thoughts on elections in terms of environmental impact? So, obviously, if I walk to the store and get milk and I come back home and I use that milk, that's, in my mind, an efficient process. But if I walk to the store and I buy milk, and then I take that milk, I put it in a UPS box, and I send it to my brother, and my brother lives in Florida, there was an airplane that had to waste fuel to get it there. So a lot of issues associated with electric cars, that all these components and all this process that has to do to make each item are done in different parts of the world.
But how is this different from like the batteries in a gas car?
Well, the battery in a gas car is very small, and its function is not, it's only to start your car.
So what's
I
the
know,
order
but
of magnitude? How much bigger? Yeah, everyone knows a internal combustion engine vehicle battery is about this big. How many times bigger is a EV?
The Tesla well, let's not say a model. So the Tesla car, it's about 1,200 to 1,300 pounds, the battery. Whereas I believe everyone knows if you open your hood and you take out the battery in a gas car, it's probably about 30 pounds.
Something
Right?
like that.
30 pounds. It has probably 6 cells in it. And for the most part, unless you have a old school style battery that takes, oh my God, what's the water? That you can refill the cells with,
Water,
someone help me.
acid.
Yeah, but what's it called?
Lithium?
Dielectric?
Not denatured. Oh my God, I'm having like
It's distilled water.
Distilled water.
Yeah.
So you would fill it. Those are serviceable batteries. Most of them are completely sealed batteries that you cannot do anything with. Once that battery goes bad, you take it out, it gets recycled, and that's it. The problem with that is that it's a very small component of a gas car. And remember, you could literally remove your battery. You're not supposed to, but I'm just saying, you can remove your battery in your car after it's on, and your alternator and all the other components would take charge of doing all the necessary items. It's not the right way to do it, but a lot of people don't know that. You do not need a battery in your car once it's on.
Just to go back to the mining thing, you're not finding big, pure masses of the rare earth metals that you need. You may find that an appropriate place or the most promising place to mine has less than 1% of the metals you're looking for, all blended in and mixed up. So now you got to excavate and remove 100 times more volume than what you're actually going to get.
Correct.
And then you got the refining process as well, right? So that's where the huge impact comes.
Yeah. So to answer the question,
and there's a follow-up here
right?
too,
To answer
right?
the question is, it does have an impact, but it's very difficult to quantify what the impact is of a regular car to that one without taking a lot of stuff into consideration, because every manufacturer does things differently.
But I still have an issue with why, and like I'm the biggest environmentalist, right? But I still have an issue with why people are concerned about this, but they're not concerned about, what's the environmental impact of making this glass or making that plastic bottle or that camera or whatever. Like, I don't understand why this is a big deal and
No,
nothing else is a big deal.
I believe that it's just like having a touchy conversation with your spouse or your child. You want to open the conversation, right?
But why about this and not about anything else?
But usually, if you have a conversation with a child, you don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. It's going to be, well, if this ain't right, then why is that right, right? And that becomes a little touchy, right?
Absolutely.
So your point is you're absolutely correct. So I invite the fact that it's becoming so popular and so many people have such a misconception, you should use those topics to bring out, hey, the fact that you're paying attention to that and you think it's good, we should educate you on all the nuances of
So,
it.
Johnny, is your point that, hey, and we understand EVs, the public kind of knows a little bit about it. Is your point that, hey, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's not necessarily good or bad, but here's the backstory.
I think the point
But
is people buy EV cars thinking they're doing something good for the environment, but maybe they're really not. That's what you're saying.
Well, maybe they're really not, or maybe it's just simpler. Maybe they should just be educated on what you're actually doing. Not that you're not or you are.
Right.
It's just don't have this. I'm running into this showroom thinking I'm saving the world. There's an impact to everything we do.
So
that's all I'm saying.
Unless we go to hydrogen vehicles, I think a bicycle trumps internal combustion engines and EVs in a big way, right? And
By
you're saying
far. By
internal
far.
combustion engine and EVs are maybe a
Well,
little
not
closer than
necessarily,
we
because you have to
think in
figure
terms
all
of
the
overall
food.
impact.
You got to grow a lot of food. Maybe it has to ship all over so you can eat it, so you can pedal that bicycle. So you need to
Yeah,
consider
but what's the
environmental-
incremental increase in food that you're going to need if you're
2,000
biking
more
everywhere?
calories?
Possibly, but you're going to save that in healthcare because you're going to be that much healthier.
But-
right now, if you have a Flintstones
Unless you get
vehicle,
hit
you're
by a
going to need
car.
foot
Wait,
surgery that I had.
But I'm gonna bring
That's
this
different.
I'm gonna bring this back,
Especially
to
when the pavement's hot, you
And-
burn
and-
your feet
and
off.
let's finish
back
it
to
up.
a serious
And
one,
let's
but
finish it
it's
up.
it's to a point, right? I believe the same way, and I've been wanting Ray, and only because he has
By the way,
more time.
my feet are kind of sexy now.
Wait,
Yeah, they're looking good.
so it behooves you to walk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Put some sandals on.
With sandals.
Yeah, man.
To his thing was, I don't want to lose my. I want a financial map,
Don't have it.
right? And we don't have it yet, but we're working on it, right? And someone will say, well, what does that have to do with this? All I want is that if someone decides, I want this car or that car, you just click on it and the thing says, this is the impact, this is what it went through to get made, this is the footprint. That's it.
There
Very
are
simple.
startups working on that.
Exactly. And that's all I'm saying. All I've been saying from the very start is that when new technology is introduced, most often there is a lot of misconstrued ideas about it. We all need, there's the internet's out there, there's all this information out there. There's very hard for these publicly traded companies to hide this stuff. We should just do the research and understand that when you're plugging this thing in, where does the power come from? Do we have enough? Let's do a simple mind experiment and say, hey, if everyone had a little map and said, hey, my job is only a mile away, these are my day-to-day chores, this is your best option. Because that one charge is going to do what it's supposed to do. But if I'm someone who commutes daily and my commute is X, let's say 600-800 miles, back and forth, and this is probably not the best thing for you.
Yeah.
That's it.
You'd be in
Very
jail,
simple.
right? I mean, back and forth 800 miles each way in a day.
It's a lot, right? You can't do that.
Yeah, not in a
Be a lot
Flintstones
of
car
speeding,
either.
yeah.
Not in Flintstone's car, but imagine we have fleets at work and people go to Worcester, Massachusetts, people go to Pennsylvania. It's a very common thing, right? Because we want this to be mainstream, right? So if it's going to be mainstream, it has to fit a lot of scenarios, right? And all I'm saying is that the system or the EV community should be more transparent on exactly what this is costing the consumer and what is the carbon footprint. What is the obligation that the U.S.
The industry is not going to do that, right? The industry has shareholders,
they're
and it needs to maximize its profit. So it's got to be some NGO or third party,
or
right?
us just provoking
Or
people
what
to
you
say,
just said.
hey, do the
Yeah.
research and don't be ignorant that you think you're doing 100% good.
Got it. All right. So we're going to move on to another question here that we've got from a viewer. What are the different types of insurance? What factors to consider when choosing an appropriate plan? So I'm assuming this is life
Life
insurance.
Well,
Not
why are
necessarily.
we assuming that? I thought
Yeah.
it could be health insurance, could be life.
Okay.
Oh, we have a clarification. It is life
It
insurance.
is life insurance. All right, good. All right, who wants to go first?
Well, I'll start at the high level. You've got term and whole life policies at the
I would like to
highest
live my whole
tiered
life.
division.
Gary wants to what?
I want to live my whole life.
So let's call it term and permanent life. How about that? Let's call it term
That's
and permanent.
fine.
All right, go.
All right, I'll do term life. So a term policy generally very cost effective, especially if you get it when you're young. A term policy pays out if you die within a certain term. So something common, folks in their 20s or 30s, if you've got kids, well, think about a term policy at a minimum, because
For
for
how long?
relatively low cost,
You would say like a 20-year term or a 30-year term.
you can get,
right?
typically they'll come in 10, 20, 30 years. I've heard of 40s also, but they're generally in round numbers. So the at a minimum, think about how long is it going to take for your kids to be on their own through college, if they're going to go to college, or if they're going to be an entrepreneur, maybe some seed money, right? So term policy costs, depending on the benefit, right? You can get a term policy for $100,000. You can get a term policy for $5 million. Cost is proportional. At the end of that term, if you haven't died, there's no
Good for
value
you.
left. You've spent all that money
You feel
on
like
an
you're wasting it, so
insurance
you kind of want
policy.
to die.
It expires.
It expires, and there's no value left on that. But for a lower cost than permanent life insurance, you've had your family protected for 30 years or more.
For theoretically the time where it matters the most, right? Where they're young, they're in school, whatever, you're still the breadwinners, So term, the thing about term and permanent life is that the cost is dramatically different, right? Like maybe 10 times, right? Like you might get a term policy for $800 a year for 30 years, and a whole life policy or permanent life might be $4,000 a year, $10,000 a year, right? It could be
For the same
ton
benefit
more.
level.
For the
that's
same benefit level,
That's until you die. That's permanent, forever.
but you've got to keep paying it forever.
Okay.
Not
What's the matter, Ed? You
necessarily.
can't-
I think
I'm
there's
going to devour that whole bag.
I think there's a part
be
to
my
this.
guest.
But I think there's a part to this that we need to clarify, and we hope that the listeners are enjoying them. But if you can be really clear when you ask a question on why. So I would ask, why are you inquiring about life insurance?
And how old are you?
Yeah, I would ask a few more questions so that we could sort of pinpoint the correct way to do it, because Ray can elaborate. The life insurance industry is extremely deep.
And
It has a
complicated.
lot of different options, and we could probably do how many podcasts
You
about
could do
it?
hours of it. We'd all
Yeah,
still be
it's
confused
amazing.
at the
It's
end.
amazing.
So what
So we would
general
hope.
trends
But yeah,
do we
so
have,
let's
right?
talk generally. So generally speaking, you'll hear terms like whole life, universal life, variable life, right? They all kind of behave the same way as far as you pay a lot more than term. They go till you die. You have to keep paying the premiums on them every year. They do stop sometime, like I think in your 80s or 90s, like it's way out there. But they're much more complex than buying term, right? So all those different names like variable and universal and whatever is just about how the money is used inside that policy before you die. So it's something we're not going to talk about here because it's too complicated. But they all generally say, hey, you're going to get money. Your family or your beneficiaries are going to get a bunch of money when you die. You're going to pay for this for a long, long time, but it's also going to have an investment component to it. That they call cash value that grows over time. And that's the real difference between term and permanent life, is that with term, there's nothing there. You pay your monthly thing, you pay your annual thing. When it's done, goes away.
And you can sell your whole insurance if you want and get out.
You can terminate the policy, and you can take out whatever that investment component was, which is typically not that great, and terminate the policy. Yes, you can. But
If you do that with a term policy, stop paying, you're free to stop paying, then there's no coverage, there's no benefit. So why would I ever do a term policy, not a whole life policy? Because, if you have bad luck, you get a 20-year policy, you're going to die 21 years later. The reason is because it's extremely
cheap.
extremely cheap compared to whole life. And what are you going to do with that extra money you have? Can you invest it better? Do you need it? Can you not afford whole life? Those are the things to consider. And if you've listened to some of our earlier episodes, the more money that you can control and invest can put you in a situation where by the time the term is up, you've already got
More.
Yeah.
more money that will cover you.
So there's a big like philosophical debate about this, and it's been going on forever, and probably will continue. Right? Do you buy term cheap and invest the rest of your money, or do you buy the whole life or the permanent life because you never have to worry about it again, right? Because you will get to a point if you're 25 and you buy a 30-year term policy, when you're 55 it ends, and if you realize like, oh, I still do want life insurance for some other reason that I didn't think about before, well, trying to get insurance when you're 55 is a lot different than getting it when you're
Right.
25, and the cost is going to be significantly higher. So to Johnny's point, why are you asking this question now? Is it for my kids? Is it for my business? Is it for my spouse? Is it
Myself,
for myself?
my
Like,
own situation.
do I want to leave a big pile of money for my family when I die, or is this just to get me through some short-term thing? There's a lot of factors that go into this, right? But it's probably safe to say that, if you're going to do the term thing and invest, you've got to have a plan for that, right? You got to decide, how are you going to invest? Are you doing it? Are you giving it to a financial advisor? Like, what are you going to do? Because if you just take that extra money and, go buy cigarettes and beer, well, then, it's probably not a good idea. You're probably better off.
Well, no, because then you'll die sooner, and the term policy will actually pay off, right?
And your family be happy.
Absolutely.
That's right.
But
That's right.
but in all honesty, look, the reason whole life and different variations of it and term all coexist is because if you do the math, if you do the spreadsheet, it really comes down to the fact that, well, they're kind of close in terms of cost and benefits and risk, and it really comes down to your personal plan.
So speaking of this, I have started on the spreadsheet yet again that compares term and investing to a whole life, or actually an indexed universal life policy, and also compares it to an annuity policy. And I need Adam to go through it and check all my formulas and stuff and figure it out. So there's never going to be a straight answer to that, but it definitely has a personal touch to it for everybody who goes into it. But up until now, I'll just say this. We've been term and invest for the most part since we were in our mid-20s, right? That was the path that we took. I'm kind of on the fence now whether there's other reasons to do permanent life insurances. I don't think it's one or the other. It could also be you do some of both. But what have you guys all done? Let's wrap it up with that.
So in terms of insurance, I know in the beginning we weren't sure, is it life, is it other things? One of the personal investing books and personal finance books that I read when I was younger had talked about when you're considering any type of insurance should only be for catastrophic loss. It should never be for convenience. Oh, it would be very inconvenient to be stuck with that bill, right? That should never be a reason to have insurance. Insurance should only be for catastrophic loss. So when I read that in the book, I thought that was very, very helpful for me to differentiate. No. Okay, now it narrows it down to these guys. And then when we're saying when you're looking at insurance, you need to have some kind of idea of what you're trying to cover. So in this particular book, it was kind of steering you towards the term life insurance. And it was saying when you're looking at the amount, well, how much should I get? They're looking at what are your liabilities? Do you own a home? And do you have a mortgage on that home? Whoever your loved ones are, spouse, children. If you die, look at your income, what would not be coming in. Look at your liabilities, what's left on your mortgage. All right, how many children do you have? Do you expect those children to go to college? What would that cost potentially be? And now you're looking at real numbers to cover. The book was talking about if you're just kind of pulling something out of the blue because it's what you can afford or what you think will save you money, it may not actually cover what you intend for it to cover. So therefore, get out the calculator, the paper, the pen, the spreadsheet, and figure out the number that you want. And I thought that was very good. The last thing that they mentioned in that book that I thought was very helpful, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit in the beginning on episode 1 and 2 of Financial Stability, and that is we talked about a lot of different buckets when we were younger, right? We had the 401k, we had the Roth IRA, we had the traditional IRA. We started putting our money in all the buckets, and I think Ray had mentioned at that time, boy, we realized, we don't have any money to invest to do anything else. And so what the book was saying is that you don't want to sacrifice your long-term savings for your retirement for the purpose of insurance. And so that was another reason yet they kind of steering you towards the term life insurance. So I really liked the perspective of that book, and I thought it's very down to earth and practical. So that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, so
That was more like 5 cents.
Yeah, so I have for my personal, for reasons, we don't have kids or nothing. I do not have, but something I did learn in a personal situation I went through, very interesting. A lot of people leave wills and leave things and leave money to different people. But something interesting about life insurance, the beneficiary form trumps your will. Whoever you left it in the will get that. It does not matter what you say in your will. So learn that. Yep. The person who you want to have it is in that form, not in your will.
So to be clear, you don't have any life insurance?
Yeah. None before.
I as well. I don't have any life insurance. Partially because I plan on living forever. So far, so good.
You haven't died at all?
So far,
Yeah.
Unlike you, so far.
Excellent.
I'm doing a good job.
For 183 years, you look pretty good.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I don't have kids. I figured why put money into this where if I were to pass away, die, whatever, my living forever does not work. I have enough invested that that's just going to go and take care of the problems anyway. And I don't like to think about dying, so you have life insurance, you're always thinking about it.
Okay. I think I already said my piece. So we've had term 20 and 30-year term policies for a while, and they're actually getting close to expiring now, which is making me feel even older. We did do some whole life policies more for investing purposes because there are other philosophies on how this works. But that we'll go into that some
Separate
other time.
episode.
So totally separate
L-
episode.
long episode.
So
Adam?
if you think about whole life and permanent life, you're guaranteed some rate of return. Well, how can these companies possibly guarantee you something? Well, part of the reason is the return can be somewhat subdued. I'm convinced I can do better than accepting a guaranteed low return. So my wife and I had several 20-year policies. 2 of them are expired now. We've got 30-year policies as well, and we've got 2 kids, mortgage, and the idea is that they will be covered. The other thing to consider is you might also have some coverage through your employer, right? And you need to take that into account too if you're fortunate enough to have that, because you might need that much less if you're talking term insurance.
One thing on the employers that I found out, apparently, if you're paying the premiums out of pocket, which are not tax deductible, you got to pay that out of pocket after your taxes. Then, if you need to go ahead and make a claim on that insurance, your insurance, whatever they pay out, is going to be tax free. But if you're not paying out of pocket, if it's somehow subsidized, employer or other group, through professional association, then there are going to be some tax implications. So you want to need to consider that as well.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is that if you did have some policy through your employer and you chose to take less on your personal side, but then you change jobs or you lose that benefit, you might be stuck. Like, now I don't have enough, right? Because I used to get, if I got 100 from my employer, $100,000 policy from my employer, and I took another 200 because I wanted 300 total, and then I quit that job or leave that job, I don't have that
You gotta
100 anymore,
subsidize it. Yeah.
right? So you might be stuck.
But you might have also grown your net worth in that period where you don't need it
Maybe you
anymore.
have. Maybe you have. So lots of math. So that's a complicated one. Could we do a whole episode or 3 on that?
course. It's situational.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
we'd have to talk real numbers and real examples because it would get boring really fast. So, all right. I
You got to be getting near the end. The bag of Skittles is gone.
Yeah.
If we
that's-
keep doing this, we're going to be
You ate the
using
whole
that
thing?
insurance.
Yeah.
Not me.
You're supposed to be healthy
It's
and
empty.
running and stuff. What's
had
wrong with
some.
you? You're supposed
So-
to leave it for me.
The bag is empty. That means the show is over.
That's right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be here next time.